sitting with Dr.
Max.
And if you can tell me, he's one of the marriage counselors, and we would like to get some information on his mission for one thing, and then also why he got into this, and then maybe later on we get into the myths about marriage counseling.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was ordained into the Christian ministry in 1974, so it's been over 40 years. 20 of those years were spent in the West Indies as a missionary church planter and educator. And when we came back from the Dominican Republic, went back into local pastorates in Miami and Oklahoma and in Indiana. About a year and a half ago or so, I decided that I needed to leave the church I was at, and I began to look around. And one of the things that I'd always enjoyed about my pastoral ministry was the counseling that I did. I've been doing it for about 40 years. So came down here in Florida, and I tell you the truth, to escape the winter up north.
Too cold for you.
It just got too cold for an old guy. And so I came down here, and while I was here visiting my son in Claremont, I made the acquaintance of Dr. Nussbaumer, and we began to talk. And he said, you can come down here, and if you go through FACT, and you can get your license, they vet you, and you have to turn in all of your education, your certificates and things like that, and they check you out. And then anything that you need to do more than that, you have to do to come up to their qualifications. And I got my credentials through FACT, and came down here about the first week of August, actually, to start full-time Christian ministry through marriage counseling. And that's what I specialize in. Although I do other things, that's my specialty.
Now, tell me a little bit about the myths of marriage counseling. What are some of the myths?
Well, one of the things that I hear all the time is a man comes in and thinks that because he came to counseling, he's fixed his marriage. And that's a big myth, because just coming doesn't do it. It doesn't show your wife or your husband, if it's a woman, that everything's okay. It doesn't change the patterns of arguments or financial wrongdoing or whatever, just to come. So another one is this, that the counselor does the work. I don't do the work. You do the work if you come to counseling. I provide guidance. I can lead you to the right places. I can help you and assist you, but you have to do the work in between sessions. And so with each session, I supply homework that you need to do between the times that you see me. That's another one. And then another one is that just because you're Christian, that doesn't mean that you don't have marriage problems. Christians don't get marriage problems. It's the myth. I see many different kinds of people here, and most of them are Christians, because I advertise as a Christian marriage and family therapist. I want people to know that when they come to me, you're going to get answers from the good book. We also marry that with sound psychological principles, but we're not going to teach or preach. We're not going to hit you over the head with the Bible, but the principles that we use are all biblical principles.
Okay, now let me ask you this. If you have to describe in 2 or 3 sentences, what is marriage?
Well, marriage is a covenant relationship that God instituted in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. And of course it says there in Genesis that a man will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Okay. And that one flesh is more than just a sexual union. It's a union of the mind, the goals, the partnership that you have together. You no longer are going in one direction alone. You're going in that same direction or a direction as two, becoming one.
Okay. Now, learning to communicate, that seems to be one of the biggest issues that people have. What is your best to describe? Let's say a husband and wife no longer have reached the point, no longer talking. He goes in one room of the house, she's in the other. It's going on for 2 years. Now they're starting to see the dividends. Exactly what would do to try to straighten that out or assist that situation to move forward?
Well, the first thing is that if they come to me, they make this agreement. Now, let me just read it to you.
Okay.
Okay, I agree to keep my relationship as my utmost priority and work on it every day. I will not allow any issue to be the reason to forget my agreement. It is my hope that my everlasting love for you, along with this agreement, will help us achieve a relationship that will last a lifetime. Okay, so the first thing that I talk about with communication is men and women need to understand that they need to learn a new language. You know, men don't speak woman.
Correct.
Naturally. And women, you don't speak man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been explained in a couple of different ways. I like to explain it this way, that a man's brain is like a waffle. Maybe you've heard that before.
No, I haven't heard that.
Okay, a waffle is full of grids, okay? If you pour syrup on that waffle, the syrup will settle down into the holes made by the grid. And the reason that I describe it that way is because men are very good at compartmentalizing things. They can go to work, can have trouble at work most of the time, not always, but most of the time, they'll leave that trouble at work. They can have a relationship problem with a coworker, and they come home, they leave that there, they compartmentalize it. When they de-stress at home, they usually go to the center box in the waffle, which I call my empty box. Okay, and my empty box is where I just let everything else go. For me, this is what it looks like when I'm in my empty box. Okay, I'm in front of the television with a remote control, and I'm really not listening to my wife, who may be speaking to me, and I may hear words, but I'm not listening. Okay? Now, for a woman, her brain is like a bowl of spaghetti. And the bowl of spaghetti, you know, you see all the pieces
You
of
said
spaghetti.
that. I didn't say that.
I said that, yeah. I happen to love spaghetti, by the way.
Okay.
I was taught to love spaghetti by my wife. I haven't always loved spaghetti, but I do now. Okay, so a bowl of spaghetti is all twisted and turned in this bowl, and it's covered with sauce. Now, every one of those spaghetti strands touch each other, and the sauce covers it all. Now, here's the thing, that the spaghetti strands are all the things that have gone on in her life today. She called her mother was upset with her for some reason. She talked to her sister, they made plans. She went to work and somebody there talked behind her back. Whatever happened, it may have been a very good day, it may have been a bad day, but it's all there together. And that spaghetti sauce is hormones. Okay? So everything that happened is juiced up on hormones on top of it. Now, a man doesn't have all those hormones that constantly make everything interact with each other. So a woman comes in to the house at night, she begins to talk about her day. You know, it's been proven scientifically through studies that a woman speaks about 20 times more words a day than a man does.
Wow.
Okay? The reason that we need to understand this in communication is because what a woman really craves at the end of the day is conversation. Conversation is more than just talking, it's engaging with that other person. You know, it's a person who not only hears but listens and is concerned. That's how they relieve stress. Now, when you get a man coming in going to his empty box and a woman coming home and wanting to have a conversation, you get a problem. Okay? So, one of the things that I tell men is that you're going to have to come home as part of this agreement, and you're going to have to listen to your spouse. And I don't mean just sit in the same room. I mean, I know some people who, wives and husbands, sit on the same couch and play with their phones. And they don't interact with each other. I'm talking about interaction. I'm talking about listening actively and hearing actively. You know. So then the other thing is that the woman has to understand that the man de-stresses by going to that empty box. Maybe you call it the man cave. It doesn't really matter, but that's how he de-stresses. So it's not helping if all you're doing is harping. If he has no chance to relax and to de-stress. Now here's the one word that I like to use in this stage. It's intentionality. We need to intentionally change some of our habits and intentionally put other habits in their place. We call it rehabilitation and dehabituation. It's just a fancy terms for breaking some habits and adding some new habits. The breaking of the habits here is breaking the habit of going directly to the man cave without listening, or the empty box. And for the woman, it's not going directly to the couch to start complaining, but giving your man, your spouse, an opportunity to de-stress a little bit beforehand. You got to break that habit. And then you have to make a new habit. And the new habit is, I'm going to come home as a man, and I'm going to give my wife some attention. And when I say attention, that doesn't mean I go over and kiss her and hug her and touch her. It may include that, but mainly it's let her speak, because a woman doesn't compartmentalize like a man does. Okay, so they have to get a little bit of relief going. So you intentionally break those habits and intentionally start new habits.
Now, let's say, for instance, when it comes to the trust factor, we're going to run over 8 different things, if you don't mind. The trust factor, once that's broke, someone go out, whether it's the husband or the wife, and cheat. Is there a difference? Now, I'm going to ask you this. Is there a difference in a one-night stand versus an affair? How do you fix, or are they settled on both even? You understand what I'm asking you? Is it basically she cheated or he cheated for one night and you moved on? Is that easy to get over, or is it an affair, or they both are the same, no matter how much time is being spent?
Well, it's obviously better if it was a one-night stand, but
I mean, we know they're wrong, but
yeah, but we know that either way it's wrong,
Mhm.
and it takes an awfully lot of forgiveness on the betrayed party. But it also takes some things that the betrayer, the cheater, has to do. For one thing, they have to break that off immediately and completely. You know, so here's the problem. What happens is a lot of affairs happen in the workplace, and that the cheater, man or woman, may have to work with that person all the time that they had the affair with. So it becomes a problem, because if you put somebody back in that situation again and again, it's hard for the betrayed person to really trust, because you're in the same situation that temptation overtook you.
so it needs to be absolutely separation, even with communicating.
Absolutely. You can't communicate with them. You can't do things with them. Yeah, and I hear this quite often. Well, I know we did this and it was wrong, but it'll never happen again. I have to work with her, or I have to work with him, but we'll just be cool about it. If I was that person, I'd request a transfer. I'd request a different kind of activity, if you could at all, because in order for there to be real trust rebuilt, that partner of yours has got to believe it's not going to happen again, and that's hard.
And it takes both to work on some different things.
When you say both, do you mean that?
I mean, the husband and the wife, the betrayer and the
husband.
Let's say the husband did it. Let's just call the husband did it, and the wife is the one that is hurt. So if the husband did it and he's got to work, or husband or wife who did it actually has to work, she can't, in other words, don't think time is going to pass. Oh, you know, it's been a year.
Yeah.
That's it. So what happens? Have you ran into anyone who has that attitude where she should have been over?
Oh, sure. But there's a lot of things that
Bless you.
there's a lot of things that should happen right away.
Okay,
For instance, the man needs to make his cell phone available to his wife, because a lot of these things are instigated and built up through texting. Okay, and he needs to not be so jealous of it. You know, why are you looking at my cell phone? He needs to be open and brutally honest with her. Yes, we did this. I was wrong. I repent of it. I am talking to her now, and the wife needs to see the letter that they write to tell the woman this is the end of it. Needs to see that. The wife can't really trust him to do it on his own. He needs to do it in such a way that the wife sees that he's doing it. Okay? So he can't be jealous of his cell phone. He's got to let that be open to her. His emails. He probably ought to change his email address, because if it's a mutual affair, they're probably emailing together. And he needs to change that, and it needs to be open to his wife too. It should be In my case, my wife is named Becky, and it should be maxandbecky@gmail.com rather than drmaxhi@gmail.com or something to that effect, so that she can get into there without any problem. And what this is doing is it's allowing her to see that not only is he thinking, I'm not going to do this, but he's acting upon it.
Right.
So behavior is what counts, not empty promises, behavior. And so the other thing is this, if the man has come to this point that he's cut off the affair completely, that he's given her access to the text messages and to his phone, if he's given her access to email and all of that, and he's totally wiped it out, then she's got to accept his apology and his repentance to her. So, I mean, she can't continually hold that over his head. If he extends the invitation to please forgive me, then she needs to accept that.
But he needs to be open on all facets.
Yes, and not just one time.
Right.
Ongoing.
Ongoing, because he done tore up some trust.
Right.
So he has to, and a lot of people feel like, well, I did it, and it's been a year. They make no effort to fix the issue, no effort to do anything, and then expect for it to be resolved by the other person. And it doesn't get resolved because you're still doing the same thing.
Right.
You run out the house when you get ready, you leave, and even with the actions. And to me, this is the way I feel. If your actions don't change, and you're not more open, then it's a problem. If you used to party every night, every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and that's where you cheated at some point that needs to change, because
Absolutely.
it's on you to me. This is just me. It's on you. So I think you need to change some of your behavior until you get that trust back, that now you can go out. That's
here's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about going out as a pattern of the behavior that brought this affair to fruition, that if there's a point in time in the future where you go out, you ought to go out with your wife.
Correct.
Allow her to see you in action. And I get that complaint quite often. I'm there partying, it's my party and all this, and I look over, I'm cutting the cake for my birthday cake, and he's over, with this other girl. Yes, he's just talking, but it's the same girl that he had the affair with last year.
Well, it could be a different girl that's pretty, and the problem is, they don't see it. I don't think in my eyes that, and I've done some studying, not as much as you, to your extent, but they don't see that it's the same.
The men.
The men don't see that it's the same thing, or the woman who cheated don't see that when she's over there talking with a guy or whatever, then they don't see that it's the same. The person who looking at him is seeing the same
she's just paranoid.
action.
She's just paranoid.
Yeah, but they don't want to move on it. They don't want to do anything about it, so therefore you stay here.
One of the things that I told my wife early on was, I don't read your mind.
Okay.
And so because I don't read your mind, you can't really know either what I'm thinking or doing. The only thing that they've got to base their action upon is the action they see me doing. They can't really read your mind. They may get close to it, but
now let's move on to number 4, learning how to forgive. And I think that's one of the hard things. Most people say forgive and forget. I don't think too many people can forget. Now they may be able to forgive and move forward, and I don't even know whether 100% is that in your works and your experience. Has anybody been able to truly give 110% and forget, or is that just a myth?
Well, the forgive and forget, totally forget is a myth. But you can get very close to it. 1 Corinthians 13 talks about the qualities and attributes of love, and one of those is keeps no record of wrongs. Okay, so here's the difference I see. You forgive, and you begin to put it in the back burner of your mind. You don't bring it up. That's one of the things that if you've accepted the spouse of the betrayer's, if you've accepted his apology and his repentance, then you say, okay, I forgive you, and I will not bring that up before you anymore. And so you put it on the back burner of your mind. As time goes on, and as you see that he's continued to change, that he's not repeated the old habit patterns, or he or she, that he's doing the new things that are better, that you like, that becomes less and less of a problem. And that's why it becomes something like, no record of wrong. I'm sure that my wife has done things to me that I was upset with at the time, and I don't have any idea what they are. anymore. I don't
Because
remember.
you forgave.
I
Now-
forgave her and put it in the back of my mind.
Now my studies, even though it's smaller than yours, forgiving oneself for allowing somebody to take you through that, is that part of this healing process? Or is it just forgive that person, what you said?
Or are you saying, let's just say I'm the betrayer
Mm-hmm.
and is forgiveness?
Your wife have to forgive herself for allowing you, for you to take her through that. Is that one of the factors in forgiveness?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. If the wife is the injured party,
Correct.
there are things that she may need forgiveness for, but it's not for your infidelity.
No, I'm not saying for infidelity. I'm saying, it used to be a saying, after you forgive the other person who done you wrong, you must now forgive yourself so that you can move forward. So does that come into play, or and what I mean is, I guess, you done something to me. I didn't like it, okay? I forgave you. But because
Do I
it's been
know
a
that you
distance,
forgave me?
yeah, I already told you I done forgave
Okay.
you. But now I need to forgive the inner part of me. Is that still a factor in this equation?
Well, I'd have to ask what inner part of you needed to forgive. Were you angry? Did you
The
hate
anger,
them?
the hate, the bitterness,
Okay.
and allowing someone to take you to that place. Would you say that is that still part of?
Well, I would ask God for His forgiveness.
Mhm.
And I'll give you an example, okay?
Mhm.
Okay, well, when I was 22 years old, I had quite a bad temper.
I find it hard to believe. Such a mild guy.
Well, I'll tell you, I did. Okay, just believe that. I was out of work, had a 1-year-old baby. My wife and I had been married just about 2.5 years. And we were spending about 2 weeks with my in-laws and 2 weeks with my folks, going back and forth while I looked for jobs, and things were really tense. No money, having to depend on them. And they didn't have that much money, so it was a tense situation. I was standing in the middle of the hallway, and I don't remember why, but I was screaming at my wife, who was directly in front of me, and my mother was right behind her, when I realized that they were both cowering in fear. And it was like a light bulb went off in my mind, and I thought, oh my lands, you're out of control. You better get in control. And so from that moment for the rest of my life, I've been very conscious of my temper. And I tell people this, and I believe it's true. For me, especially, I'd rather have self-control than self-esteem.
Okay.
I get my self-esteem partially from my self-control. But here's the end of that story. In about 2006 or 7, we had a situation at one of our churches. We had a man who was bipolar, and his moods went from very high to very low, and he could be very offensive. And he had been very offensive in the day or two prior to this incident. And I would go in on Saturday night. The church was totally black and alone. I'd go into my office, and I'd just prepare myself for my service the next day. And this fellow, because he was the treasurer of the church, had a key to the church. And he entered a room like Kramer on Seinfeld.
Oh.
So I'm sitting there thinking I was all alone, facing away from the door, and he enters the room like Kramer. And I just jumped like 3 feet out of my chair. And immediately I felt, because he'd also been bad earlier in the week, I felt this rage just coming, welling up inside me, just really rage. And I turned around and I looked at him and I said his name. I said, "You better leave now." Very calmly, but I was burning inside. And it must have been obvious to him, because he turned around and left, and that's not indicative of his character. Generally, his personality would have been to fight it out. So I immediately knew I'd blown it. Nobody else would have known it but me. Okay, so I turned around and I wrote him an email and apologized. And then I wrote an email to the elders of our church, and I told them what happened and told them I apologized. And the next day in church, in the worship service, before I preached, I made a public apology to him in front of everybody there.
That takes a lot. That's a real man to me.
Now,
You can admit you're wrong and come right out of it.
Yeah, now here's the thing. He left over that. And I later asked his son, I said, why did your dad leave? I apologized to him. He said, we were talking in church about this, and his son said, well, it was an embarrassment to him that everybody else would know what he had done. And a man was standing beside his son and said, don't worry about that, Max. We all knew what he was like. But here's the point. And you may do something a long time ago. It doesn't mean that you've totally forgotten it. But you act immediately when it comes up again and correct it to the best of your ability. You can keep a record of the wrong, but it's always down in the deep archives of the mental computer.
Now, after you forgive, the next step is rekindling the spark of intimacy and passion. How exactly are you going to go about that? Once you forgive, I get that. But now you got to rekindle what has been taken or lost.
Well, one of the things that I always do is I give homework for each session. So between the sessions, they go home with homework that they each need to do. And part of that is, for instance, one of the things I do is ask them, I want you to come back next week with 5 qualities about your mate that you really love and adore. Okay, so they have to sit there and think, wow, she's really good with the kids, or she's always been very kind to the neighbors and to other people. My wife always thinks the best of everyone no matter what, and that's one of the reasons that I was attracted to her, was because she always thought the best of everybody. Now me, I have to think about that. I hope that I get to that point, but it isn't immediate like it is for her. And so I would write these things down, and they start thinking about all those qualities that they love about their spouse and that they were attracted to in the very beginning. Okay, and then the next week we talk about other kinds of things, but depending upon where we are on that checklist of things that we want to go to, every week they have something to do more. We talk about the difference between a man's physiological makeup, and the fact that he's a visually oriented sex machine in his younger years. But we also need to talk about the fact that a woman usually is not. And so we talk about quality time versus quantity. Quality versus quantity. A woman needs to think more about quantity, and a man needs to think much more about quality. And so instead of coming home and going, yeah, I want some sex now,
Okay.
He started that wooing process early in the day with some good texts, or she's done some things to him. She's added a little something to his lunch, or she's done something like this, so that they can be thinking about that kind of thing all day long.
Some foreplay, and a lot of people don't know how
Absolutely.
to do
Foreplay and just really intentionally trying to understand that this person that's across from me doesn't think like I think. She thinks like a woman, or he thinks like a man.
setting the tone.
Absolutely setting the tone for the evening. Okay. But like I said, a woman needs to think more about quantity, and a man needs to think a lot more about quality.
And meet in the middle.
Absolutely meet in the middle.
Now, acceptance.
Acceptance, it has to do with, I realize that I have flaws, and I'll probably always have flaws. You know, one of my flaws, according to my wife, is I've inherited a cheap gene from my father. CHEAP, and I'm talking about DNA genes, okay? Yeah. A cheap gene from my father, and I look at things, immediately I want to go the cheapest route possible.
I don't think that's just you.
That's not just me, no. I understand it's not just me, but in our marriage, you know, she eventually comes to the point where she accepts that she's always going to be fighting for a little more quality, and I'm always going to be fighting for let's go as cheap as possible. Okay. And we meet someplace in the middle. I accept her for who she is completely, and she accepts me for all of our faults. We accept each other. And when we do that, when we really accept each other, we see each other as beautiful and handsome no matter what.
Okay.
Even me. I'm accepted by my wife as handsome. And I look in the mirror and I think, how in the world? How in the world? You know, if I was trying to court me, I'd run the other way.
And now we have friendship. That's developing. And now, I'm not like you, but that's developing, being able to talk, conversate, and make her your best friend, would you say?
Yeah.
Or is that something different?
Well, it is that. It is that. I see on Facebook all the time now, somebody's wife is having a birthday and they'll say, 29 years ago today I married my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. Right now it's a trending thing to be best friend to your spouse. But what I'm talking about in friendship here is we begin to enjoy doing things together again. Do you know when you first met somebody and you're attracted to them, there's a period of infatuation. And when you're in that middle of infatuation, there's nothing they can do wrong. And you'll change yourself in order to get into that woman's graces. I can remember when we were first dating, my wife liked classical music. It bores me stiff. If we had classical music on in the car on a long trip, I'd go right to sleep and run off the road. But my wife, on the other hand, she gets excited by it. She'll sit over on the passenger side and she'll conduct it, that classical music. But you know what? When we were dating, we talked about Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture and different things like this because I wanted to make sure I was on her good side. Okay, we were infatuated together, and there were other things that we did. Like I wasn't a fan of Italian cuisine. I took her to places like Mamma Mia's restaurant, and we had Italian stuff because I wanted her to know, that I could be just as involved with this as she could. So this period of infatuation where we don't see any wrong, as studies have shown that it lasts maybe at the most 2 years. And we did all kinds of things together then, but we also stopped doing those things after that period of time left us. But now what I'm talking about is we learn again to do the things we can do together as friends. Now what we do, I hate to shop like most men, especially not alone. But what I do with my wife, sometimes we'll go down to Lowe's. We both like home improvement programs, and we renovated our house, and that we sold before I came here. I'm in the process of renovating another one. We both like to do that, so we just go down to Lowe's sometime, walk around Lowe's and look at sample tile. And we talk about, would this look good? Here's a backsplash, and things like that, because we both enjoy that. So we find things we both enjoy. My son, my oldest son, works in the Newport, Tennessee education department. And he works in the developmental handicap division. So he's very gentle. He's a 6'4", 250 pounds of muscle. On his off time, he's a river raft guide and a hiker. He married a woman who's also an educator, and now she's also doing river raft guiding, and they're doing this together. And they put things on Facebook. It's just remarkable that I see these two that are spending so much time together, both in their work and in their recreational time. They've become very good friends, besides being husband and wife. And so, I don't know what you do for your downtime or for your recreational activities. You may play golf or whatever, but my suggestion is you find things that you and your wife can do together and both enjoy. So, be a friend. Don't go home and say, I'm going to call up my buddy and we're going to go out and do such and such.
Okay. Now, love for a lifetime, what does that mean?
Well, I think it's a secondary commitment. Okay, you made this commitment. My wife and I made a commitment before we were married that we would never consider divorce. Never consider divorce. And I tell people several times, I've never considered divorce. I've considered murder, but never divorce. No, that's not true, but because I know I'd get caught. No, so it's a secondary commitment. Excuse me. It's a secondary commitment that says we've come this far together. We're never going to consider divorce. We're going to find a way to work things out. Marriage is not a level playing field. There are going to be ups and downs all through your marriage. But when you are up and you're feeling good, you have to remember that the next thing is maybe you're on the downside. And so you need to commit yourself while you're up on top, that in the downside you will not split apart. You'll find a way to work it out and work together to go back up. And we've been doing that now for 43 years. And I tell you what, 43. And they've been 43 good years. If some of them have been difficult, but they've all been good.
Well, is there anything you'd like to say before our last minutes to anyone out there?
The only thing I'd like to say is that I'd love to see you if you're having problems, even if you're not having problems, but you just want to make things better. I'd love to see you come in. You can give me a call. My number's on my website, and I'm sure at the end of this, Justice here will probably put that on the film, or the video, the website.
There'll be a link right below.
A link right below, okay. And give me a call and we'll talk about it. Now, with me, the first session is always free, and then we'll talk about a fee after that.
Okay, thanks for your time, and we look forward. Thank you from JAPEC.